We're going where you want to go so you can be where you need to be. It's Road Gang Radio with Lindsay, Lawler, and Jimmy Mack on RadioNemo.com.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Lindsay LaRue is on the scene, lean and mean and able to hear the scene. Good morning to you over there in Franklin, Tennessee. We're over here at the Fastport Studios at the historic Edgar Degas House. Less than a minute and a half Uber ride from the founding house of trucking radio, WWL 870 AM. You can capture a lot of that, by the way, Lindsay, if you listen to Nemo's Night Beat. I knew you got a chance to listen to that last night. Good God Almighty. It's great, isn't it? I was like, I get to sit here and watch him do it, and he and Dre have a real groove going on, don't they?
They do, and it takes you back. It's just one more cool addition to making this whole platform around here sound like the road, and that was the whole goal. And so, hey, by the way, it's working. There's a little something for everyone, for driving music to talking about riding is healing, to talking about adventures and roadside attractions and all kinds of things we're doing around here. It's very cool. And the idea that Nemo's Night Beats and that the original Road Gang now can sort of cycle back, have full circle moments of like this next guest who's joining us is really cool. So this next guest is steeped in history through his family, and I'm really excited to talk to Jody White today, especially on Road Gang, where open road meets deep storytelling and music that moves us, Jim. That's who we are. That's what we are. These are the days of our lives. So for those of you who know Tony Joe White, whose sound was like Jim. Now how much did you know of this music?
Here's the thing. I didn't know a lot of the entire milieu of it. I knew some of the songs really, really well, but I didn't know the entire, like, the breadth and the body of the work, by the way, which
Gotcha.
Is one of those things where you think, oh, that's kind of great. That's kind of awesome. That's kind of got that feel of the Road Gang kind of thing. And then
you dig in.
And then the depth of it. I mean, the idea that there's a real catalog here. I mean, yeah. We ain't got to tell Jody. I mean, there's real talent. I mean, real vision. Something really unique and very gifted. The 70s in many ways produced. It's groovy stuff. It's groovy.
It's groovy stuff. So our guest today is Jody White. If that name rings a bell, it probably should, because he's the son of the late, great Tony Joe White, the Swamp Fox himself. You know him from Polk Salad Annie, Rainy Night in Georgia, songs Elvis covered, Tina Turner cut, Waylon Jennings recorded. I mean, like legends across the board, Jim. So Jody has been digging through his dad's old reel-to-reels and has unearthed this like treasure trove of music from the early 80s, including an album called The Real Thang that's about to see the light of day again. Thank you, Jesus. We're talking unreleased songs, jams, I'll call them, even a co-write with Waylon Jennings called Cowboy Singer. So cool. I grew up here in Tony Joe White on the radio back in Texas. Dave Nemo, our namesake of this station, used to spin Polk Salad Annie, as we've said. So this is a pretty cool full circle moment. Let's bring him in. Everybody, please make welcome to the show our new friend and yours, Mr. Jody White. Good morning.
Hello, how are you today?
Great. How are you? Thanks for being here.
I am excellent. Just working away on making sure everything is in place because mamas don't let your cowboys grow up to be babies.
Yes,
came out today on the streaming services. So
yes,
just making sure all the back end is running properly on that, which of course it's not.
Well, no, nothing ever works properly. Hey, let's start real quick from this. Where are you this morning? Where do you call home, and or where are you tuning in with us today from?
I am in Nashville.
Okay, very good. Well, I am as well,
yeah,
friend.
My office is in Green Hills.
Okay, well, you're just right down the street from me here in Franklin, Tennessee. Jimmy Mack is over there in New Orleans with our split studio. So good morning, Jimmy. Say hi to Mr. Jody White, if you will.
Hey, Mr. Jody White, by the way. I was thinking about this as I kind of began to move through this catalog of music. And there are certain artists that when you hear them, and I have a picture of Dr. John behind me, and somebody once asked me, well, what's Dr. John's style? And I went, Dr. John. That's his style. That's what he is. And we're talking in Tony Joe's case, this is the same thing, right? I mean, it's one of the most unique sounds that I think a lot of people, there's a lot of people who love it, who have great memories of it, but a lot of people don't realize this is a really incredibly original artist who works on his own rhythm. I mean, there is something truly unique about that. Look, every artist is unique. I get that. But this is almost genreless. It almost kind of breaks through into a whole bunch of different places. And what's it been like to revisit all this stuff, not just from a kind of a down memory lane, but to like, it's relevant now. There's a real sorts of, it feels very modern. Is that your experience with it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think you hit on 2 points, which with him actually go together, but normally they don't. You said, his sound, which is original to him, which it is. It's like, you hear the way he plays guitar, his voice, or his delivery, and it's just, it's very unique to him. But at the same time, it's genreless. So he played some songs that were country. He played a lot of blues. He played, wrote more pop songs for Tina Turner, wrote ballads for Elvis. Like, it's amazing that he basically dove into every genre but at the same time made it sound like his. It wasn't like he was trying to copy anybody. He was just like, okay, well, I want to make a country record this year. And so he would do it.
I love that. I love that because we talk a lot on the show about things going a little more genre-less. And that's, I know when people, as a songwriter myself, people are like, what kind of genre are you? And I'm like, I don't know, music. I'm the music genre because it's like your dad. It's like I wrote what I was feeling that day, whatever came out, to go from Elvis to Tina. Right? Yeah, exactly. From Elvis to Tina to Waylon. That's clearly writing for your mood. So I do love this when you've mentioned that, after your dad passed, that the job shifted from what next to what's left behind, which is really cool. And so I'm curious that what was the moment when when you were digging or whatever, when you really, because it's one thing to say, okay, I've got 1 or 2 things here, but there's got to be a tipping point moment when you're like, oh, we're sitting on like this treasure trove here. This is more than just releasing a single. This is like releasing another part of the legacy. When did you feel that kind of turnover? You're like, we've got a real catalog here.
It was pretty early in the process. The amount of tapes that he had was somewhat overwhelming, and I didn't know, okay, this is just 100 tapes of the Black and White album, or, what really was in there. But then once I started digging through and transferring and realizing, like, wow, this is, like, there might be more unreleased music than music he released, because he was a home studio guy, much like J.J. Cale. Playing multiple instruments, using drum machines, just doing whatever he needed to do to get his ideas down. And so being able to dig all of that up and it being stored on reel-to-reel tape just preserves the quality so well. So it's like it was recorded yesterday.
Wow.
Jody, one of the things that we're talking about a little bit earlier on in the show, and it was about trucking, but it applies to all of what we're talking about. Well, actually, 2 things. The first of which is the fact that Americans, by very nature, we invented the garage. I mean, we did. We basically said we're gonna take the barn and slap it alongside the house because
that was some man who was unhappily married is like, let's get a garage.
Yeah, I'm gonna move the barn right next to the house. Is what I'm gonna do. We're gonna get in there and tinker and kind of mess around with stuff. And, this feels so much of the 70s in the sense that it's like, I'm going to mess around and play a little bit of this and play a little bit of that and do this. And what happens in those situations is you get this entire world. We all have that experience of going down to the basement or going down to the garage and having an entire world kind of laying before us. And the idea that you become almost a curator of both a museum and a living monument and something that is active as well, too. So you're engaged in what is almost kind of like not just reconstructing, but world building here, because there's so many kind of separate pieces of this. In putting all this together, have you been able to reach any conclusions? Have you been able to kind of get a sense of, oh my God, this is what my dad was up to. This is really what was being built here, and maybe even he didn't see it. And does that question make any sense, Jody? Because it's been in the back of my mind.
Feel free to say no, Jody.
It's okay to say no. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Actually, it does make sense, and I think the biggest takeaway was that he did what he wanted at that point in time, whatever it was. So, I found a tape that was postmarked 1966 where he had mailed a copy to himself to copyright it. And so I was like, what is on this tape? Like, it could be anything. And so I took that one to, there's a company here in Nashville called Welcome to 1979. So on the things that look a little more brittle and, historic. I try not to touch those, take them to those guys. So they transferred it, and I was like, wow, what is this? It was like his voice was so much higher, and he was on the back porch, and it sounded a lot like Elvis, just the way he was singing and playing, the way the guitar chords were just very simple. The delivery, everything about it was like Elvis. So I went and I spoke with my mom. I was like, Mom, why is his voice so high here? And she was like, oh, that was before he had his tonsils out. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, so he had his tonsils out in like 1967, right before Polk Salad Annie and everything. And so like that gave him his deep voice. I was like, wow, I had no idea. Neither did anybody else. And she's like, oh yeah. So it's crazy because, I'll find those tapes. And again, it sounds like it was recorded yesterday. The quality is pristine. So, figuring out how to roll those things out. But at the same time, I'm finding tapes from the 80s where he had like a DX7 keyboard and a drum machine and was just making up whatever was on the top of his head that day. It's just being silly and having fun, totally lighthearted. So there's just such a wide variety. And so curating all of this music and figuring out, how to package it, how to release it, how to spread it apart is just, it's a blessing. I'm very lucky that they spent, time and money through the years to preserve all of these tapes.
That's so cool. We're talking to Jody White here, son of Tony Joe White, and the lost tapes and some recordings they're finding that are going to be released soon. I'm so curious how much, because exactly what you're talking about, the fun moments, the emotional moments, the raw moments, but obviously technology has changed so much between then and now. So I'm so curious, Jody, how much of the decision to include or exclude, certain takes is emotional versus technical. So how do you balance really honoring the perfect version versus letting those flaws and rough edges sneak through and tell the story when everybody wants to be so pristine these days versus that 70s raw vibe? How do you balance that?
Yeah, he made it pretty easy to put things together because, like I said, he would play one style of music one year and then something else the next. Even though it was unique to him, it was, skating across different genres. So when I started looking at these lost albums from the 70s and figuring out, okay, what's the best way to release them? Well, I just found other recordings from around that same time. So, for instance, we re-released the album Eyes, which was in 1976. And so for that one specifically, we had these incredible home studio versions of almost all of the songs on the album. So was able to include those for people to hear. And so, the fans have seemed to really appreciate that. And then for this upcoming album, The Real Thang, this one was a little more difficult because if you listen to the album, the original album, there were only 8 songs. And you had Redneck Women, which was him and Waylon and had a real country kind of feel. And then you had these more like swamp funk disco versions of Polk Salad Annie and even Trolls of Rock and Roll. And so it was figuring out how to put those things together was a little more complicated. But then I was able to find some reels where not only did he have other versions of Redneck Women, but he had some other country style songs where you could hear that transition of him kind of leaving the Memphis swamp funk disco scene and coming into the country music Nashville scene. And so it just seemed appropriate to put all of those songs together because they were all from the same time.
One of the things that I got a chance to really enjoy over the last couple of days was actually just taking the time to kind of pull up all those clips on YouTube of that performance at Austin City Limits. And just out of curiosity, I like I said, I didn't do too much deep diving. Does an actual DVD or streaming service actually exist that has that complete performance on it? Because like I said, I got to see all of it, but I saw it in pieces. Does that exist?
Yeah. Yeah, it's out there. It's New West releases all of the Austin City Limits concerts, at least all the old ones. And so they distribute it, and it's available on YouTube, digitally, through the streaming services, and it's everywhere. That performance gets a lot of discussion because most of the time people go on Austin City Limits, it's like, okay, we need a 5-piece band and backup singers, and like they really take the performance like up a level. Well, Tony Joe just showed up with a 3-piece band, just him, a bass player, and a drummer, and it was just like totally unhinged. And I think people really enjoyed that. It's different from what they normally see.
Lindsay, I have to tell you, he smiles throughout the whole thing. He is just beaming throughout the whole thing. It's one of the most. It's an incredible presence. It's an incredible. Like I said, I really enjoyed it thoroughly. Go ahead, Lindsay. I know you got a question.
Well, I want to talk about his legend here in a second. But first, I want to know about Jody. If you got swamp DNA in you, I'm so curious about your upbringing, and if you have. I know you do have these, but I would love to hear a memory of either you listening to your dad or your dad listening to or playing new songs. And did he at home, was he sharing these works in progress with you guys, family? Do you remember him working things out?
Yeah, so I was born in 75 in Memphis, and we moved to Nashville in I want to say 81 or 82.
Okay.
And so, my early days, I remember just a lot of people being over at the house in Memphis, Duck Dunn and Blues Brothers, and just like that whole scene, like those guys were always together and hanging out, which was really cool. And then when we moved to Nashville, he and Waylon were best friends. So we were at Waylon's house, all the time hanging out, and they were best friends. Shooter Jennings and I did a thing for Outlaw Country recently, talking about growing up together and whatnot, which was really fun.
Very
and
cool.
fun to think back on it too.
Yeah.
But as time went on and I started understanding more about, he's making music, and at that point in time he had a home studio in Franklin. We lived in Franklin where you are. And so I would walk down to the studio and see him there working all the time. But I never really had any desire to play instruments. For me, it was just I'm going to go to college. I want to get into business. Music business is too unstable. I don't want to do that. And then after college, I worked for a year with the Tennessee Titans, and then realized, okay, wait, all the money's going to the players. Maybe I should do something different. And then, and my dad.
So you started your
brought
NFL
me
career.
That's right. And then my dad brought me in and was like, Roger Davies was managing him at that time, and he was like, why don't you just take it over? Roger's kind of, he's a little bit busy with Janet Jackson and Tina Turner. So that was kind of the moment we started working together. And it's like, I'll never forget that, looking over my shoulder and being like, Dad, do you want me to be your manager? And he's like, sounds good. So that was literally how it started. And I was like, okay, I need to get smarter. So I went back to business school and just tried to approach it the right way.
Wow.
Let me ask you from just and beyond just nostalgia, because like I said, I do think that this music feels as new and as fresh in many ways as it felt back then. What do you think is so important about preserving this? Other than, there's of course the family connection, and of course there are people from back in the day who really love this stuff. But what do you think is the most important part about preserving this legacy? What where do you place your dad? But where do you place the product as well? You're a guy who's pretty business savvy. So, what is the urge to kind of be a part of this world as you build it?
That's an interesting question, and not really one that I've thought about. It's been very short-sighted in terms of me finding music, putting it out, and just adding it to the story. And it's like all these things are just kind of are happening and falling into place. But in terms of looking at the big picture and what it is I'm trying to build, it's hard to say. I just want him to be remembered as an important musical icon, and for me to set things up in a way that it'll live forever, through streaming, through lyric videos on YouTube, whatever it may be. Just having all of that in place where people can just continue to enjoy his music.
I'm actually going to throw something at you, because I was thinking about this, Lindsay, because one of the things that Lindsay and I talk about on a regular basis on the show is how the sausage gets made, and we really appreciate it when our listeners make a commitment not just to listen to the music, but to understand what goes into kind of making music a lot of times. And I feel like we have lost the ability, with very few exceptions. Rick Rubin comes to mind as a producer, but there's a lot of people we don't have public figures who serve as hubs in the sense that, like, in the way that Christofferson did too, as well. It's like I'm doing all these different things, and that different people are coming to me and kind of moving through my work, and that there are people who are just kind of gravitational pulls who kind of go a little bit off the reservation, a little bit onto the frontier, and then they discover new things or take two old things and make something new and kind of pass it on. And he kind of stands in a really nice place, I think, as kind of this little hub through which a lot of really important movements move and take stuff from him and he takes stuff from them. And he's a reminder that we don't need to be pigeonholed. So many people get kind of pigeonholed these days that he's a great reminder that reminds us that we can be a wandering troubadour, either, you know, in our garage or on the road. So that's just kind of my take on him, that I really, really appreciated from getting a deeper dive into his work. So do what you want with that. I don't even know if that's right, Lindsay, but that's kind of my take on where he kind of stands. I mean, contributing, what is it, Crown Prince on everybody's turf, a welcome guest everywhere is kind of how he feels. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's also what makes my job fun, is that not everybody knows this music. You know, it's not like, oh, we have this Bob Dylan album of these songs that he recorded somewhere. Well, everybody knows what Bob Dylan sounds like. So as cool as it is, because Bob Dylan is a legend and amazing, not everybody knows Tony Joe White the way they know Bob Dylan. So getting to discover a new artist who has a huge catalog is a great thing. And so that's just what I'm trying to make happen.
Well, and it's so cool. I mean, there's a big, this is a trend is the wrong, that's kind of, that dumbs it down, but I'm going to use trend here of a lot of artists that we've lost or that are getting older, where it's family members, friends, whatever, are trying, because of technology today, because of social media, we can share things like this. And I love this take. You know, you just said a minute ago, I just want people to know him. I want to make sure his memory is intact, if not even, you know, better, leave it better off and let more people know about him. And one of my good friends, Emily, she was married to Mark Volman of the Turtles, who just passed away, and she and I had coffee the other day. She's like, she said, I just want to make sure people remember him. And I feel like I really feel the weight of, and the responsibility of that. So it sounds like that's what you're doing. And so that being said, to remember not only the music, but the person, the man that he was. So in all this archival work, you know, you find not only music, but photos, letters, memorabilia. And I'm just curious if there's anything non-musical, like personal letters or anything visual, that sort of shifted how you see your father as a man and not just a legend.
I wouldn't say that I've had anything that really shifted how I thought about him, because I mean, I managed him for 18 years while he was alive, so we spent a lot of time together on the road.
Yeah.
I knew him pretty well by that point. But to your initial question, there is so much memorabilia, like handwritten lyrics, notepads, fan letters, tour books. Like I have so much stuff, and so, you know, a lot of what I'm doing now is sifting through it, organizing it, and figuring out what all's there, because you can digitize everything, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, then it's like, what's the point? So just trying to, like, first organize it, come up with a plan, and then digitize it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, just going, I would think that's overwhelming as well. And it's funny that, Jim, that he said why my job is so fun, but how interesting and unique that your job is literally to keep your father's memory alive. What a cool place in life to have, like, this full circle. I mean, that just feels like a really beautiful purpose, something that lights you up and brings joy to other people. That just feels really powerful.
Yeah, it's like half business, half archaeology. It's great.
By the way, can we talk really quickly before we run out of time here about the ability to actually drink a beer named after the song you're listening to?
Yeah, buddy. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine named Roy Milner was the founder of the Blackberry Farm Brewery. I don't know if you know Blackberry Farm. It's like a super high-end resort in the mountains of East Tennessee. And so he is a beer genius, like has created lots of different beers and won awards all over the world for different beers. And so he was in town, and we were talking about doing some Tony Joe White branding stuff, whether it was barbecue sauce or some Polk Salad Marijuana. We were talking about everything. So we're working on all of those. But the first thing he was like, we spent literally 7 hours in my office listening to music, talking about ideas, and he was like, I've got the perfect beer. Let's call it Cowboy Singer, because that was one of the ideas that came to the forefront. And so that was literally in the spring, and because he owns the brewery and the canning facility, like we already have the beer in cans now, and it's now with Ajax Turner Distribution in Nashville, and it'll be available in bars and restaurants and liquor stores soon. In Nashville first.
In Nashville first. How cool. What another way to...
It's cool. And the beer is excellent.
Well, I just have this vision of you, Jody, people sitting around like listening. We talk about seances around here. Talk about a seance to put on some Tony Joe White around the fire, drink a beer that is inspired by Tony Joe White. I mean, this feels like the perfect seance, Jim, in October specifically.
Summon the spirit with a little sip of the spirit. That's what I'm saying
buddy.
right there, man.
That's right. That's right. With a smooth lager will make you feel like a cowboy.
I tell you what we should do, Lindsay, at some point as the season kind of rolls on, we should actually have it'll be like 10:30 in the morning. It's always beer 30 here in New Orleans, but we should actually just have a moment where we kind of just all sit on the porch and everybody has one of these cold ones and then listens to the song as well. And we can all just kind of make that happen. I'd
also like the link to the Polk Salad marijuana when that ever comes through.
Yeah, that one's coming along, but we have a company in Denver that loves the idea, so we're just trying to find time to make all of these fun things happen.
By the way, Dre just went into a zone of sorts. I don't know where he went, and I'm picking on you because we're talking about the Dre's
smoking that Polk Salad weed, guys. Head on over to TonyJoeWhite.com, TonyJoeWhite.com. Find out about the music, the beer, the other products coming soon, and the legacy that is this beautiful man, this beautiful catalog of music, and obviously a very beautiful family. And he's clearly did something right by raising you, somebody, and turning around to be able to respect your father and turn this into a career. So really, really such a pleasure talking to you, Jody, and I hope to see you down the road here in Nashville.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. And if you want some Cowboy Singer beers, just hit me up and I will deliver.
Oh, be careful what you wish for. My address is
done. By the way, I can. Here's the thing: 2306 Esplanade Avenue. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I can take care of that right now.
I guess on that note, are you guys brewing any NA beers?
No,
sorry, Jim, but that's okay. I'll tell you how good it is.
Not at this point.
Not
at this point.
I have some great friends here in New Orleans that you met, Lindsay, who have more than one. They'll have them for me. Thank you so much, man. It's great to meet you, by the way, Jody.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.